my friends are simps.
For many years, a staple part of my live gig setup, and also, to be honest, a tool that I use fairly frequently in my home studio as well, has been this wee thing, the Behringer Xenyx 1202. Now, this is an analog mixer that I have had for something like 15 years. I don't really know exactly where I got it or who from, but I have taken it to all sorts of weird and wonderful places, including alcohol-soaked venues with sticky floors where people spill drinks over you, to, you know, kind of questionable gigs in muddy fields and forests and things like that. And to be honest, I've never really felt a need to upgrade it because it just keeps going. It's working even to this day. And the mixer that I use for my Dirty Wave M8 sets, which you can go and watch on the channel, have all been going through this. Now, Behringer have just announced an update to their Xenyx mixer series in the form of the 802S and the 502S. And they sent me over one of their 802Ss to check out and do a video on because they knew of my love for this portable, cheap analog mixer. Now, the notable addition to these new mixers is the fact that they include a USB connection, which allows you to use the mixer as a kind of stereo audio interface where it mixes down all of your tracks and transmits them over USB, which is really quite a nice feature indeed. And probably, I have to say, a good reason to upgrade if you haven't already. Let's take a quick look at the specs of the 802S in particular, which I happen to have here. As suggested by the name, the 802S has got 8 individual inputs spread across 5 different channels. Channels 1 and 2 are single mono inputs, which are either on XLR connections or jacks. They've got individual gain controls for each channel, and they also, importantly, support phantom power, which means you can use your fancy condenser mics with this. Channels 3 and 4 are stereo pairs of mono jacks, which share a channel strip each. Finally, input 7 and 8 are also stereo. They are on the RCA connections, but by default, they also work as a kind of USB audio foldback thing. As you can see, there is a 3-band EQ here, and we also have an effects send, which you can access via the jack connection on the top. We also have jack outputs for headphones, so that's obviously on a stereo jack, and we have 2 pairs of output jacks, which are mono outputs as you might expect, for main output and also a monitor output, so that's pretty cool as well. The monitor output means that you can stream to monitor or you can stream to the mix, which gives you a wee bit of control over what you're pre-monitoring and everything else. In terms of the build quality, this is made out of metal, all the knobs and everything feel nice, and the input jacks are unusually shiny, although to be honest, I might just be, you know, referencing my old dirty mixer here. The one thing you say is the sides are plastic, but to be honest, they aren't really critical to the operation of the device, so it doesn't really matter. And if it's anything like recent Behringer products over the past couple of years, this will last you a long time. I mean, hell, if it's anything like the old mixer I've got down here, then you'll be using this for a very long time. On the rear of the device, you can see we've got the USB connection on a big fat USB-A, I think that is, or USB-B, I can never remember what one that is, the old printer style one. And then we have an on-off switch here, and very nicely, which is an important upgrade, I think, from the older mixer, we have a DC power input connection. On the older one, it was this kind of weird proprietary cable thing. Oh, where is it? Oh, fuck, I'll try to show you. Yeah, it had this connection, which, you know, was fine, but it meant you had a very specific power connection, which was a problem if you forgot your cable in the house, as, you know, I may have done a few times. When it comes to the 502S, it's a smaller, more stripped down version of the 802S. I don't have one and I haven't seen one myself in person, but the key differences are, firstly, it's obviously got less channels or less inputs on there, 5 versus 8 on this 802S. Secondly, it's got a 2-band EQ instead of a 3-band. There's no phantom power, and there's also no effects loop or effects send. Now, I know that mixers are not the most sexy topic in the world, but there are a bunch of reasons why somebody might want to pick one of these up. And in actual fact, part of the reason that people like these notebook style mixers is the fact that they can be used in a variety of different situations. The first thing is, of course, that they are portable and they are very cheap. If somebody bumps into you and you spill a pint all over your mixer, it's not going to cause a huge problem. You can just replace it for 50 or 60 quid or whatever the cost is, versus if, like me, you might have spilled a pint over a DJ mixer and realised the cost of those Pioneer things and how much is going to skin you to replace them. The USB audio on these does add a whole realm of new possibilities though. For example, you could use this as a small submixer for your drums or something like that, and then route it all back in through a stereo mix into your DAW without having to have the complicated interface setup and everything, which is a really big benefit. Similarly, if you've got a device like the Akai Force, which accepts audio interfaces, you can plug this directly into the Force and use it as a submixer, which is also really cool. Now, if you're a streamer, this kind of thing would be really useful because it would mean that you don't necessarily have to go out and buy an expensive or fancy interface in order to use your phantom powered microphones, or indeed to share snippets of different things from your phone or maybe another device like a synthesizer or whatever. You can just plug it all in, hook it up to your computer, run OBS, and away you go. Now, I'm not a streamer, partly or largely, I guess, because my internet connection is so shit, and despite all of my attempts, I've still not been able to upgrade to fibre. However, I can still use this because in my studio, my main interface is sitting over here, whereas my computer station thing is over that way off camera. And this is a big problem because it means if I want to use some of my nice microphones to record while I'm sitting at my desk, I can't really do that because I need to stretch the interface over and it's a huge hassle. And the way I've been using this is to plug it directly into my computer, plug in my nice Neumann microphone, chat away into it, but also plug in my M8 if I'm recording a demo or some instructional video or, you know, anything like that. And that's really, really handy. Another situation where this would be really handy is if you've got a small electronic setup that you want to play in a DAW-less fashion, whether that's live or in your house or whatever, and you want to record straight into your computer, you can use this as the submixer, put all your elements together and just stream the stereo mix in there and record it in Logic, or whatever DAW you happen to use. Now, in addition to this, there's a whole bunch of ways you can use cheap mixers like this as a creative tool in of their own right. And if you look about, you'll find examples where people have taken, you know, different effects pedals, created feedback loops with the various channels, sometimes without any input at all, and come up with some really interesting sonic results. Just as I was getting ready to record this video, actually, I saw that my good friend Simon the Magpie had uploaded his own experiments in this kind of world, and he also linked to a really interesting and informative tutorial about that whole process, so it's worth going to look at that if you haven't come across it before. These kinds of cheap analog mixers from Behringer have always been really useful, and they're the kind of thing that, you know, whenever I've gone into a studio or another musician's house, they always seem to have one of these kicking around, doing a variety of different miscellaneous tasks. The addition of USB audio and the fact that these can act as audio interfaces now just makes them even more useful and good value for money. Now, there's a couple of things that I would love to have seen added in these, or at least implemented. The first being multi-track USB recording. Even though they have various channels on the mixer, the actual output of the audio that is streamed is only stereo, and that's a great shame. I can understand why there's a limitation there at this price point. However, if they ever released a multi-track version of this, it would be an insta-buy for me. As it is just now, this is a worthwhile upgrade, but be aware that the USB audio, for now at least, is stereo output only. The other thing that I would have loved to see was the addition of a dedicated effects return channel so that you didn't have to use up one of the channels in the mixer for that purpose. So if you're looking for a cheap, portable analog mixer that gives you a bunch of different inputs and it also allows you to stream stereo audio over USB, then you finally got an option. What else can you say about it really? Thanks for watching just now and see you later.